Welcome to Tales from Tech Support, where today's my birthday, and the only present I ask for is a subscribe from you. In our next post, OP takes an airplane flight to plug in a cable. I want to preface, this isn't exactly an IT computer issue, but it kind of rings pretty true, so I want to go ahead and read it anyway. I do industrial commissioning for equipment, usually low and medium voltage. I had to travel a lot and do all sorts of projects from port cranes to mine elevators, steel mills, paper mills, solar sites, etc. I was coming back from a job and my connecting flight was through the US. My plane lands and immediately the airline is paging me. I go to the desk and they tell me that someone is frantically trying to get a hold of me. It's my supervisor. He needs me to get on a different plane. A site had been commissioned, the PLC guy has left, and only now they are down and it's a big fiasco. I remind my boss that I'm not really a PLC guy. I'm mostly drives and motors person. He needs someone there ASAP, so I go to do at least figure out what the problem actually is. When I arrive, the facility has lots of people in suits and ties because apparently this was to be the initial light-off on the production line. So, bosses from overseas. I find a manager and ask him what the issue is. He just points to a random room and tells me to fix it. So I walk into the room and find the PLC rack. The power supply to it has been disconnected. It's just laying there on the bottom of the panel. So I find the breaker, turn it off, mount it, and turn it on. Green lights look good. I walk out and have them try it. The system works and everyone's happy. One manager comes to me and asks how I fixed it. I told him, I just plugged it in. That's it? I'm not paying you for 5 minutes of work. Of course you aren't. You're also paying me for travel time as well. I never got a straight answer as who disconnected the power supply. I offered and gave them some free training to a couple of technicians to try to prevent this from happening again. It turns out they had a computer, but no one knew how to actually use the program, so I spent a few hours helping those folks out too. I helped some folks out, referring to drawings and overall production schemes and whatnot, but I wasn't prepared in figuring this stuff out as I went. I contacted my boss and explained how little these techs know and that they needed some help, to which he replied that the end user refuses to pay for training. So technically, I shouldn't have done any sort of training, but at the end of the day, these techs were stuck on an island. They were very nice and respectful to me, and because they were not stupid, they just realized how clueless they were. As I was leaving, their boss made it very clear that I was never to come back there again. Oh man, the good old, is it plugged in? I guess phone call never happened for this one, so maybe they should get in touch with Level 1 tech support. In our next post, OP destroys a greedy business owner. I want to start by saying that I am from a small country in Europe. I've worked as an independent contractor in the IT field for over 20 years, doing all manners of things from creating simple HTML sites to managing big hotels' complete IT infrastructure. One of the many clients I had back in the day I was coding big-ish custom websites was a rental company. Now, I had heard the warnings about not working with this guy that owned it, and he had a reputation that he was sharp as a tack, backstabbing, and conniving. He was a lawyer after all, so I went into the partnership with that in mind. He wanted a new website for his renting gig where people would list their home for rent. Renters would sign up and pay a subscription to the site and he would get the whole lot. Nothing out of the ordinary there. So we make a pretty good deal on paper, we sign it, and I get started on the project. Coding everything in PHP goes well, but he demands suddenly that I show him progress only a week into the project. He wants to see the website's front end now. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I try to explain to him that the front-end work isn't scheduled to start until after 6 weeks of back-end programming, and that I only have pure code to show him right now. The contract we signed clearly states this. He gets on his high horse and then demands that I put everything on hold to do the front-end first. I, being really young at the time and fairly naive, agreed to do this without asking for it to be added to the contract as an addendum and start working on the design right away. Now, the contract stated that I was given free reign over the design's decisions as long as I maintained the same color scheme and used the same logo on the site. So, I make a fast draft in my program, and within 2 days, I show it to him. He's not impressed and demands a different direction and sets up a list of demands. I, as always, aim to please the customer and do just what he wants. I design a new layout, and his list of demands but he doesn't like them either. That's how the next 3 months go. A never-ending circle where he is never happy with anything. Now, close to 4 months into the project, he demands to see a working showcase of the backend. I point out that he himself changed the order in how the project was being done and had demanded that I do the front-end design first instead of the backend. Now, he turns on me and says, yes, the contract we both signed says you will have a working backend to show me at the end of the month. If you don't honor that, I will have to take my business elsewhere and seek compensation for your lack of professionalism. Okay, now I have 12 days to do a backend for the site. So I get a friend to help me with the work tirelessly through the weekend, and I have a good base to work from in 9 days. Mind you, at this point, he only paid the security on the contract, about 5% of the total price, and has shielded himself from paying by hiding behind, well, if you can't honor the contract, why should I? Finish this work, then I'll pay you as per the contract. Remembering now all the warnings I had heard about this guy, I decide to add a special function to the code to be safe. More on that later. So, now it's the end of the month. We have a front-end design he is okay with, a backend that has been finished to about 85% of what's required according to the contract, and I still have a month left to finish everything else. Time for show and tell. Since I was working on this development, I was running it on my own dev server and showed him in a browser on his computer. I mentioned to him that since I had a slow connection from the server, it might lag a little, but it wouldn't when we put it on the production server as his website is on at the hosting company. He says okay, and the demonstration goes on. As I'm showing him the site, both the front end and the back end, I can see he's immensely happy with it. He's trying to hide his smile that pops up regularly, and his eyes gleam from all the added ways he can now start making money from this. Now, he says it's way too slow, this is wrong, and that's wrong, blah, 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 blah. He then asks to put it on his production server to see how the speed is. I tell him, no problem, I can make that happen. Please give me 50% of the contract and I'll get right on it. Okay, I wait a few days and then I get an email from him where he includes a forwarded message from the bank detailing the transaction from him to me in the amount of 50% I asked for. So I push the system to his prod server so he can take a look. I then send him an email stating that he can try the system with the supplied credentials. What he doesn't know is that I knew he had been fishing around for another programmer to do this project. So I knew he would most likely try to screw me over. What I also suspected was that the email he sent me through the transaction proof was a fake, which it ended up being. Pro Revenge number 1. Remember that small function I mentioned? Well, what it did was if his user tried to remove my user from the system without setting one setting in the code first, the system will first delete and purge the database and then delete the web server. Well, not 5 minutes after he reads the email from me, he does just that. He tries to delete my admin user from the system to lock me out. Guess who has nothing of the project left? He does. Pro Revenge number 2. Since it's considered forgery to spoof an email, especially from a bank, I sent the information to the authorities and he goes under investigation by both the police and the bank lawyers. Pro Revenge number 3. I sold the system to a competitor of his for a better price than we originally contracted to him, and last I knew, he was blacklisted from owning a company as well as he lost all his rights to work as a lawyer. I only got that 5% he paid at the beginning, and for working for just over 5 months on this project, that's hardly anything. But the knowledge of his demise will keep my heart warm for the rest of my life. There's a great comment from the bottom of this post. What kind of lawyer is stupid enough to forge a bank transaction? That's your law license right there. Some people have their heads so far up their own butt, they think they can go around lying to and defrauding people willy-nilly, and no one will ever catch them or realize what they're up to. In our next post, a client goes to the CTO for a password change. I am a manager at a service desk which provides level 1 and level 2 support. I have this one particular client that seems to have decided that raising their issue with the highest level of management they can find instead of actually calling my team for the help that they need. The phrase, "just get it done," has reared its ugly face a few times as well. So anyway, an executive had his password expire. They decided that calling the help desk was not necessary and instead went to their CTO. The CTO. Like, that's the chief technical officer. Like, why would you go to somebody who's making big, huge technology decisions for a company for a password change? Anyways, the CTO then proceeds to call our CEO. Our CEO then sent, this is absurd. Like, this is absolutely absurd. Oh man. Our CEO sent the request further down the management chain until it reached me after like 2 more levels. I then promptly proceed to remind them that we need a call from the user so we can confirm the validity of the request and essentially told them to go away. The end? It took about 2 hours between the time the user reported the issue to their CTO when a member of my team actually became aware of the issue, and it took about 5 minutes from a phone call from the user to actually solve the issue. Like, this is another example of why just complaining and trying to go up to the highest person that you can doesn't work. Like, a lot of times they don't know how to fix it. They're just going to tell the person below them to do it. And then they're going to tell their directs to do it, and their directs are going to tell their directs to do it. Eventually, it's going to trickle down to the person they were originally supposed to call, and then they're going to do the issue anyway. That was Tales from Tech Support. And if you like this content, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to smash that like button too, as it also helps the channel out.